we're going to go really deep into the fractal verse, beyond what people call the multiverse, and into, uh, at least symbolically, the very mind of God. So what you're looking at right now is a cell. This is a cell. As you can see, this is like a top-down view. Okay, notice how around the cell we've got like this little wall, this cell membrane. That goes all the way around. You can see all these little circular dots, huge ones, small ones. Keep this in mind, okay? This is a microscopic view of what we're made out of, basically, right? Now, I'm going to show you another one. This is a neuron, okay? So this yellow part right here, this is a neuron in the brain, and neurons are how you think. Messages are passed from neuron to neuron, and that's how your brain moves around information. Now you'll notice there's a lot of little circular dots on this neuron as well. These dots are full of electricity and chemicals in the form of information, right? You could think of it like coding, okay? So whenever a signal needs to be sent from this neuron, which is yellow, to the next one, which is blue underneath it, information is passed at the little cleft between called the synapse. Okay, this is the synaptic joint between the two, or the point where they almost connect. Whenever it's time to release all of this information from this one to this one, so that the brain can make a decision about things, all of these little circles open up. They come to the top, they open up, and they release. They open up, they're like little bubbles, and they're top of the bubble pops, basically. And all of that information comes out. All the electricity comes out as well. Keep this in mind. Now, here's another one. This just shows you what it looks like. Here's the drawing, and here's the actual what it looks like on the other side over here. Right where they meet is the synapse. And you can see all these little bubbles waiting to be released, waiting to be let go. Here's another version of it. This is a really microscopic view of a cell, and this is the synaptic joint. I forgot what that's called, synaptic cleft or something. And you can see all these little bubbles, all these little round dots right there. Here's another version of it. As you can see, a little drawing, a diagram. And here, let's relate this and bring it back to our world. Okay, have you ever been standing on top of like a mountain or something? And when you look down and you're elevated and you're so high up, everything beneath you, the world that you normally would experience that seems so big and full of life and everything, becomes smaller and smaller and smaller the higher up you go. Right? So our world used to be drawn in many different ways. This one right here has it being square off to the sides, but set within a crater. So our world within a crater itself. And then as you can see, there's an indentation at the top point right there too. This is, these craters are created electrically. When there's an electrical discharge, you'll have a crater, but you'll also have a small little mountainous hill area right in the middle of it, or a divot in the middle of it that's inverted. The square portion around the edges indicates more land. The square is representative of Earth, or the number 4, which is terrestrial. So these would be the land adjacent or outside of Antarctica, which on this map would go around in a circle, right? Now keep this in mind. Let's look at some ancient drawings of how our world was depicted, right? Usually with a dome over it too, right? That dome's created by that crater shape. You'll also notice that in many of these ancient drawings, on one side, we have a mountain, and on another side, we have a mountain. These are the columns of the sky, or the pillars of the sky, just like you have the columns of the earth, or the pillars of the earth beneath it, right? Now, also take a look. You'll notice that there's this crater shape, but then it kind of wraps around and goes in right underneath, right? And that's exactly the same shape, or a similar shape, you'll notice, as these neurons have at the dendrite, or at the foot of the neuron, at the ends of the neuron, right? Just like how these have right here, our world follows a similar shape around the edges there. There's another one, pillar of the sky, and this one you can see that shape, right? Right there, it just pokes out around the edge, and then it scooches right back in. This right here, let's suppose, is a neuron. Let's suppose that this is something extremely and incredibly tiny that we live on or inside of. This is just a piece of the fractal verse, okay? Not just that we're extremely tiny in comparison. Everything's comparative. There really is no big or small. It's all compared to one another. But if you look at these ancient drawings, they follow suit with these domed worlds. Many different versions of it, time and time again. Here's a map, right? Sometimes you can find these older maps. Well, they'll show Antarctica without any ice whatsoever, right? And it's just land all the way around in a circle. And then there's water right here, in the midsection. And then these would be the highest points in that bowl or in that crater. And then here's another article. Many people have seen this one where somebody found a drawing of our world with these other land masses, it seems, around it, adjacent to it, off to the sides of it. Here's another one where it's not just our world, but our world surrounded. If you look at this on a planar, like a plane of existence, right? Then you would see there's more land all the way around again. And then once more, I've found other maps where they've added to that, and there's more land outside of those lands, separated by ice. More. We zoom out, it's like we're getting higher up and higher up and higher up as we go. We zoom out again, more land higher up. Circles, craters. We zoom out. Here's another version that somebody's made an image of, where it's sort of an infinite plane, or it seems infinite at the very least, with all these little craters inside of it with little domed worlds. Here's another one. Here's an even larger map that somebody's put many different worlds. This right here in the middle is Earth. Watch, let me go ahead and zoom in. Boom. All right, so boom. This would be like our world right here. This is the North Pole right in the center right there. That you can see it all, right? But if we zoom out, or we're rising in elevation, we're getting higher up and higher up and higher up, now we can see many different worlds, right? So it's kind of like that. This would be like a closer, view or whatever from the top. Dave Fishing! Hey, thanks, Dave Fishing. Now, we come back to this one. Many worlds on a seemingly infinite plane, which is not really infinite. It will wrap around, it'll curve down as we saw. Which takes us back to our original picture. Our original image of the cellular structure with this membrane going all the way around it and all of these little circular areas. Let's suppose that our world is similar. That our whole Terra, which would be this whole from this cell membrane, or from the edge of the land here, all the way to the other side, and many, 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 many worlds in between. This would be our branch on a tree of life, because this is just a sliced two-dimensional version. If we were to take it, instead of look at it from the top down and look at it sideways, it would look like a branch or a tree or a neuron, or, you know what I mean, something much bigger and much larger, right? So here we can see that the small scale replicates the large scale, and vice versa, that we can find these, or we should be able to, right? Let's just suppose that it's true, that this is where we live. We should be able to find this inversely in our own selves. In our cells, actually, little tiny worlds all over the place. Here is an image of what it looks like whenever there's a synaptic event, or a transfer of information, or a data harvest. So let's say that this is our world, that we live right here. This is one branch on our area, in our sector of the Tree of Life, we'll say that. And the Tree of Life spreads all throughout the quote-unquote galaxy, right? These little dots would be all the little plasma apocalypses with all of those realms. Every single one of those worlds that we looked at before, all of these, all opening up at the same time to release their physical world. As everything gets sucked up into the sky and eaten by Kronos, all of that stuff gets sucked up because there's increased buoyancy, as we talk about, right? It gets sucked up into the sky, but it doesn't just disperse randomly into space. It goes through plasma conduits, and it's guided electromagnetically and chemically to the corresponding other worlds, or other spots across from us where there's many other worlds as well. And they're receptors and they receive. And it's actually a data harvest where all of that physical world within all those little realms, they open up and they all contain coding. You're made of coding, DNA and such, right? Memories, coding, etc. It's all useful, meaning that experience would be the purpose behind this. At least that would be half of it. That'd be half of the story, is to gain an experience through all these little worlds or simulations or whatever you want to call them, and then take the information once that world's done or once that simulation has been run, reset it, redo it over, send all that information somewhere else where it can be useful and where it can be processed. What you're looking at right now is a crater on the moon, allegedly. But you'll notice that there's many times these concentric rings on these craters. This is because this is the effect that electricity has whenever it strikes, the ground, and it can leave craters like that. But oftentimes you'll see little peaks, little hills in the middle. This is especially strange because if it's an impact crater, you would expect it to just be a bowl and that's it, right? Or maybe even a divot in the middle that goes deeper, not the opposite, which is a mountain that pokes up right in the middle of these craters. This is the shape that it creates. It's called a complex crater. It's kind of hard to see down here at the bottom. Let me make that smaller. On a complex crater, you can see it creates a divot that goes upwards. If you were to fill this with water, that would then be our world. And these would be the pillars of the sky off to the sides. This would be Mount Meru at the North Pole in the middle right there. And the rest of it would be a bowl shape full of water. Unlearn the system. Hey, good to see you. Unlearn the system. Wow, you've been with us for 58 months. Big shout out to Unlearn the System. 58 months. Thank you for your support. Now, this is an electron microscope. This is showing you, for example, let's theorize, let's just speculate that this would be, let's imagine that this is one of those tiny worlds. You'll have to excuse the train that's passing right now. Let's imagine this is one of these worlds, or this is our world with a dome over it, as is discussed and talked about. I've created or recreated this on Midjourney using artificial intelligence just to show what a world would look like through an electron microscope that was powerful enough that it could zoom all the way down into these little worlds and how it would look. So much different than what we consider to be space, or that black darkness. I put this one covered in ice, or I try to make it covered in ice or whatever. But this would be like examples of many different worlds out there, but it's not space. It's not little balls that are just randomly floating about through nothingness. It's a fullness because everything out there is full. And space is full of like hallways, basically, and tunnels. Imagine that space is more like underground with just huge like tunnels that are so massive that, you know what I mean? Like, it's like it's sky all over the place, but it's tunnels basically. So here's some more examples of these infinite Earths. Every single one of these. Now let's imagine, right? Let's imagine that they were simulated realms, that this is a world. This is Earth number 2, Earth number 3, Earth number 4. They all think that they are the one and only Earth. They're all Earth, right? And if it's simulated, or if the whatever the greater picture is, you can call it God or a simulation or a quantum computer or whatever you'd like to, but if it's being done in that way, so that it's all being run off of knowledge or information or experience, basically coding, right? Information, then it stands to reason that they would all have similar coding in each one of these worlds, all secluded, all seemingly cut off from one another, so that they can run the same codes over and over and over, so that they don't lose information or waste memory or anything like that. It's the easiest way to do this is to replicate Earth number 2, Earth number 3. There's a J-Dreamers in this one right now giving a live stream. There's a J-Dreamers in this one who's homeless and, screwed up in life. There's a J-Dreamers in that one who, whatever, I don't know, became a clown, or I don't know, just whatever, doesn't matter. But every single one of them, the same DNA, the same information, all on a repeating loop, on a pattern that goes up through all of these worlds. Now imagine that these worlds are on the tip of a neuron. I'm just picking a neuron, okay? You can use whatever you like. I like neurons because it seems to fit. They would all be adjacent to each other, but never know that each other exists. But everyone inside has a feeling that there's aliens, that there's extraterrestrials, when in reality, they're their neighbors. They're their space brothers, as, the Hopi refer to them as. This is another one. Suso! Hey, good to see you, Suso. High five. Welcome. All right, so this is just an image of another synapse. This is, not what they actually look like. It's just art. but as you can see, electricity passes between the two, right? That would be the cosmic electricity outside of our world that's constantly spiraling around. All of that electromagnetic energy is out there. Here's what it looks like inside of the mind. These are all just, art, basically, but it's so you can get an idea. You have these hubs, these main energetic hubs, and then you have all of these little tendrils that branch off of them so that they can release information. So they store and they create the information, which is an experience to us, which is reality to us. And then once that world reaches its end and it goes through a cyclical reset, or the plasma apocalypse, as I call it, then it opens up the sky, releases all of that information, and then that information travels through these branches and plasma conduits, right? Much of this I don't believe is like physical, in that we would be able to physically like if this was a hallway, it wouldn't be like made of rock or anything, but more likely it's a plasma conduit. Here's another example. You can see all these little tips right here, these little flower tips. These are the tips of the neurons, and this is what they look like. They have that sort of shape that we showed you earlier, where it bulges out at the side and then squeezes in like a flower whenever it goes down. This is an example of a portion of the tree of life, or the cosmic tree of life, really. Not just some local sighting of it or whatnot. Here's another one right here. Now, look at this. Inside of the brain. Now, let's imagine, and let's suppose that the brain, or let's suppose that what we consider to be space, if the sky opens up, or we could leave and, jump on a spaceship and get out there or whatnot, we're flying through. This is what I believe it's more likely to look like from a far, far away view, basically, right? But it looks like there's all these branches and stuff connecting. This is a fullness. This is what I expected space to look like when I was a kid, as opposed to just black. You know what I mean? With twinkling little lights that seem like you can never get to them. In real space, or in the heavens, it's well lit. It's electrical in nature. There's lights everywhere. There's plasma everywhere in many different forms. And there's all these different worlds that have their main hubs and their tunnels and their passages that take you to these other worlds. This is shown to us symbolically in the movies and television shows and stuff, where the characters go through these plasma conduits, always these tunnels that take you, these tunnels of light, basically. Vortices, Einstein-Rosen bridges, whatever you want to call them, black holes, it doesn't matter. But they always go through these sort of tunnels of light. And this gives rise to the Spider-Verse, or the heavenlies actually looking more like they're connected, and that there's strands and pathways leading between worlds and other worlds and stuff. It looks like spider webs out there in space, or the spider webs of the mind, right? And they show you this in, the Spider-Man movies and stuff like that. I put this one in because I like the red and the blue. Out there in the cosmos, it's red versus blue. In here, it's red versus blue. It's good versus bad. And that's all a part of the experience. Good and bad is a necessary tool in our experience, because we experience it. Because it's here, it's a necessary tool on the greater, grander scheme of things, because it's all being run. If let's say it's like a simulation, it's being run, there needs to be a good and a bad, so that there's choice, so that we can, on the greater scale, look at all of those infinite worlds, take all of those information and process the good and the bad to weigh it out in order to make a decision. Here's another Spider-Man logo. Now, this is electricity. This is electromagnetics. This is what the Spider-Man logo is, with the red and the blue as well. It's the magnetosphere of the world, of the earth. This is how they draw it in modern academics. Okay, this is like the earth right here. This is big old crazy sun. And this is Spider-Man flying through the Spider-Verse, right? But this is the magnetosphere, basically. This is how it's drawn every single time. It's Spider-Man. This is his spider senses, ESP, electromagnetism, etc. This is from the video game Fortnite, where it shows these worlds being created, and they're tethered together by plasma conduits. They're all connected through plasma conduits. This is what the world eventually ends up looking like, basically. You could see this. If you zoomed even further back, you'd probably see many of these. Many of them all connected by these plasma conduits out there in the mind of a greater being. And they show you this in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. When they go outside of time or whatever, it's really them just leaving their Earth, or the Earth that they're familiar with, and they go to an alternate Earth that has a similar timeline. And they go through these plasma conduits that they call the circuits of time, right? And this is how they show you time travel so often in the movies, or traveling from world to world through the telephone. Oftentimes, right? Superman uses the telephone. Bill and Ted use the telephone. Neo, Morpheus, they all use the telephone to travel, right? Ralph Breaks the Internet, uses the telephone lines, basically. And that's because it's a transfer of information. Okay, it's just like using the telephone. You put the information out on this side, it travels through these electrical circuits out there in space, basically, and it ends up at the other hub, at the other world. And if you were able to get out there beyond the limits of the firmament, this is what it would look like if you were in a protected capsule while you're flying through everything with all these strands of cosmic spaghetti flying past you. You know what I mean? This is shown to us in the movie Loki, where they have the loom and the sacred timeline. All these different timelines meet together in the loom. This is also like a toroidal field, you'll notice too. This is the same one in Loki. This is a building off to the side. It kind of reminded me of Doctor Who's, what do you call it? Not tardigrade. The damn, you know what it's called. His telephone booth. Anyways, this is more like what space should look like. Don't you agree? Right? Full of light and brightness and colors. And this is heaven. This is what heaven looks like. It looks heavenly. If you look up at the sky right now, does it look heavenly? If it's nighttime where you are, can you look up there and does it seem heavenly? Or does it seem empty and cold and black? Right? It's not right. There's a reason why it looks empty and cold and black to us under the firmament. But to those on the other side, this is what they see. Imagine if you could go past, and this is what I mean. This is from the movie R.I.P.D. When he gets sucked up into the sky, this is space. In the movie R.I.P.D. I did a breakdown here on my channel. You can see it looks more like a beehive or a honeycomb, right? With all these little caverns and areas that take you into other worlds and other places, right? And this is just a local branch of quote unquote space in this particular area or movie. But in this movie, all these people, just like this main character, they're all getting sucked up. I don't know if you can see all those little dots coming up out of those, those little caverns or whatever. Those are all information. It's a data harvest. It's all being harvested. All that information in the form of brains is getting sucked up and they're, disassembled and then reassembled in order to be processed at an information hub where it processes information or experiences. Memories. And this is also why so many bad guys, especially those from space, are depicted as wanting your brain. They don't want your brain, your physical brain. It's not like brains are delicious or anything. They want it because it's valuable, because it's information. It contains all of your experiences, which are unique in all of the fractalverse. Okay, your individual experience is completely different. If it wasn't, it would defeat the purpose of having a simulation and having a multiverse and stuff like that. Each individual experience has to be unique and different. Otherwise, it's unnecessary and it could just be deleted, right? So here's all the people in that movie getting sucked up into this giant fan in space or whatever that is. I don't know what that is. Also reminds me of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Horton Hears a Who. Same exact concept. The elephant in the room is that Horton sees this tiny little flower and the Who's, or Dr. Seuss's world. I don't know if you know this, but all of Dr. Seuss, all of his worlds are extremely tiny. They're microscopic. So they always zoom in on like the tiniest thing. Like in The Grinch that Stole Christmas, they zoom in on a snowflake. And that entire movie takes place in a snowflake. You know what I mean? Just in an instant. Their whole episode has come and gone according to our actual experience. Twitch, thank you, Twitch 307. Right on. This is an example of what the fractalverse would look like if you were to go all throughout it. And I don't describe the fractalverse as like, oh, well, there's these invisible ghost dimensions. When I talk about the fractalverse, I'm talking about all time coexisting. Okay, in the space time out there in space, everything's running at the exact same time, but we experience time differently in each of these realms. Depending on where you live in the fractalverse, time acts different. We experience it different. It's our perception of it that changes, not actual time. But this is what it would look like if you were out there beyond the covered firmament of those various worlds, just floating about in the quantum realm, it's been referred to as on the movies, the multiverse, the fractalverse. It's in everything, everywhere, all at once, which we also broke down too. which gives rise to, if there's all these different worlds and all of these different replica Earths, right? Alternate Earths or infinite Earths, then that means that there's all that information is being repeated, and that there's little worlds with little people on all of these hubs, thousands upon thousands of them, all throughout what I call the mind of God, or the space brain. So I've referred to it many times. Okay, it's hard to talk about it because of the word itself. You know what I mean? Like, you have to really emphasize it. But it, when it's spoken of in the movies and TV and stuff, is always a terrifying thing. Okay, it is always scary. It is always inconceivable. It is always something that people can't even wrap their minds around. It will drive people crazy trying to discover it and what it is. You know what I mean? It drives people mad, basically. But I'll tell you what I believe it is the fractal verse, or they would call it the Matrix in the movie The Matrix, right? It is, if you look at it physically, it's a space brain. Okay, if you look at it spiritually, it's the mind of God, basically, right? Out there in space, out there in the heavens, when it's bright and there's electricity firing off all over the place. This is why they have space weather and all that type of stuff, because it's not just a vacuum or anything like that. This is the mind, and there's pathways that are firing off and sending information from one world to another. Now, you're going to get there one way or the other, okay? Those people that travel the fractalverse, I call them fractalverse travelers, they prefer to go in their current bodies that they have, because they don't want to die, right? Which makes sense to us. So they figure out ways, if their society and their advancement in their society reaches, if it goes far enough, then they'll figure out ways technologically to survive harsh conditions, to get out of their worlds, to go traverse into other worlds and open those doors into the heavens or down into the recesses of the hollows of our world to go find other worlds. This is where aliens come from. They come up from within the earth, from other worlds, okay? Because they're all connected physically. Let's say that they were neurons or whatnot, right? There is no flat neuron that has, like a coin. There is no spherical neuron where it's just floating about as a glob or whatever. They look like branches. They look like, trees. This is the tree of life, basically. It's the burning bush. These are the branches of the burning bush, or the bush that's set ablaze, or the bush that's on fire, or fiery cosmic serpents, etc., right? This is another version. This is a fractal. Okay, so a fractal is infinite. It continues on. Stephanie Cook. Hey, thank you, Stephanie. Good to see you. The fractals continue on. You zoom into it, and it'll keep on showing you a repeating pattern. This all looks different. Whenever you put all those repeating patterns together, you can twist how the frequency and the vibration of the exact same information, and it gives you a different appearance. Although it's made of this exact same stuff, all of it is one. All of it is the same. All of it is connected, and it's fractal. It just doesn't appear fractal when you're inside of it and you're comparing things, right? You think you're comparing things, but you can zoom in forever. This is like a flea or something extremely tiny. Look how far in they zoom. And if they had the technology, they could do this forever, because it's fractal and it goes on forever. It's a hologram. It's holographic. This is from Ant-Man. Whenever he's in the quantum realm, he's so tiny that everything becomes a gigantic universe, right? Why would we be any different than that? If there's something greater than us, if there's something bigger than us outside of our world, right? This is the tardigrade, right? That's funny, because tardigrade is the world's smallest animal, they'll say, right? This is a microscopic animal. Okay, not a bug, not a bacteria, none of that. That's an animal right there. And it's tiny. It's also called a water bear. And they make a big deal about tardigrades being able to survive in space. They're like, oh, tardigrades can survive the harshness of space or whatnot. What if these exist? But we only have found them on the microscopic scale. We have yet to look up and beyond, where there are gigantic versions of what we see on the small scale living up there in the heavenlies, where everything is bigger and huge, and it's the macrocosm, right? So these heavenly animals, or heavenly creatures, if they're from the heavens, right, would drop down, because if information is released out of these worlds, there would be a time when information could fall in, or forms, life forms, we'll call them, can fall in or float back down into this world. And this is where the ancient tribals people talk about heavenly animals, animals that fall down from the sky, animals that come from the sky, not birds that go up there and come back down. I'm talking about animals that lived in space, from space, space animals, okay? And they drop into our world when the sky opens up. I don't know if they get sucked in or they fall in or whatnot, but that's the time when people can leave, animals can leave, and they can come in, and they're introduced. And they're introduced by the thousands, lots of different species, and they come in, they start to evolve, and they start to change, like into hippopotamuses and rhinoceroses, and you know what I mean? Fantastic beasts of old, and many of them don't make it. But this is from Star Trek. This is the tardigrade out there in space, riding along. He's about to shoot along that lightning right there. It's just plasma. It's a plasma conduit, basically. Everything, everywhere, all at once. This is what it means. This is you on all those worlds, having unique experiences, even for yourself. There's a version of you. It stands to reason. If there's many worlds and they all are replicas of one another, right? Because it's unnecessary to create totally different worlds, you know? It's just, you know what I mean? There would be a you. Eventually, there would be your exact genetic code that would be replicated, and you would be born, at least physically, into the exact same type of body that's a copy of yourself. It's just that you might have a different personality, you'll go through different experiences, you'll act and react differently, but this is where you get all of the multiverse theory. It's also leads us into the homunculus and the homunculus theory too, right? I'll teach you more about a homunculus, right? But basically, this is from the movie Being John Malkovich. Now, in John Malkovich's mind was a world in and of itself, where people went into his mind through this tunnel or plasma conduit. They go through into his mind through a tunnel, and this is them. That's not actually John Malkovich, okay? The one that stood up. It's people in his mind looking through his eyes, experiencing they're John Malkovich now. They're inside of his mind. So those would be fractalverse travelers that go to these different hubs or different worlds, and they can see that it's all the same, that it's all connected. They can see the same people that they saw in the other world. It's just that they're slightly different people because they go through different experiences and timelines and stuff like that, right? Ant-Man shows us the same stuff. So plasma conduits traveling through, those are the hallways. They're shown to you symbolically in the movies as subways, subway trains, flying trains, like it's all that type of symbolism, tunnels, all that type of stuff, right? These are the plasma conduits. This is from The Grinch That Stole Christmas. At the beginning of the movie, many people miss this. They zoom into a snowflake, and then that's where the whole movie takes place. And because time, there's a dilation in time between realms, okay? So we experience time differently. Those Who's that live in Whoville, in that snowflake, this movie is over before the snowflake hits the ground. That's how fast time is going in Whoville, right? Compared to us watching the movie or whatever. Now, let's relate this to the homunculus. This is a traditional homunculus. For those of you who don't know, you may have seen like ancient alchemical drawings of like a wizard with a vial, and he's trying to grow a little human baby in there, and he's mixing all kinds of stuff, trying to grow his own person, right? That's a test tube baby, okay? Not exactly a homunculus. I'm going to share with you my theory on the homunculus. Now, this is drawn this way, or this is made this way because it's an exaggeration, okay? The reason it's exaggerated is because they represent, like the hands, they represent a portion of the mind where all of that energy is focused on it. So the hands get a lot of focus in the mind. The tongue gets a lot of focus. The feet, not so much. The legs, not so much. The eyes get a lot of information in the brain. So this is how they would draw it. They would draw it like a person wrapped around the brain. And then these are the features that are the most important in those, all throughout the brain. So they would draw this person to represent the parts of the brain. But that comes from little people, the idea of tiny people living in the brain that are just in there, in our brain, in a world that they think is just their own world, but they're experiencing things that have an effect on us and our experiences. They process what we see. They take it in. Like there's a little world of offices and creativity and all that stuff, but that's their world. They might not all know, and they don't need to know, oh, I'm doing this for the greater good. I'm doing this for a larger being. right? This is Herman's head. Same concept. These are homunculi. These people, these little tiny creatures, they'll cartoonify it. They'll make it human. They'll make it look like we do. And it very well may. I don't know. You got to shrink down super small to see that. However, we're made in that image, right? So we can assume that they are too. Now, this is also the same thing of these homunculi, these tiny little creatures that live inside of the brain or the mind of somebody else. This is from Pixar's Inside Out. Now, they're inside of the mind of this little girl. They look out. They're looking at the brain, basically, right? You can see these are neurons right down here. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. You can see they bulge out at the sides right there. They go in, and these are all their own little worlds. This is Earth number 2, Earth number 3 over there, full of the same repeating people, information, situations, etc., right? And they live inside of the mind, and then they get to look out at those other worlds because they're like fractalverse travelers, basically. But however they feel inside of the mind has an effect on their God, has an effect on the little girl that's in that movie whose mind they live inside of. This is also shown to you in the classic movie Inner Space, where the guy shrinks all the way down, goes inside of the guy's body, inside of his mind. Being John Malkovich, they go into John Malkovich's mind. So this is what they don't realize. In this movie, this tunnel, this little door opens up to a tunnel and it goes into John Malkovich's mind, which means they're already in his mind. Okay? They just found a path to go to like his eyes or whatever it may be. But where they are now, those are homunculi that live inside of John Malkovich's mind, basically. This is shown to you in the movie Meet Dave with Eddie Murphy, where there's a whole crew of people inside of Eddie Murphy's mind. This is what it traditionally looks like. The ancient alchemist trying to create a little human inside of a little test tube or whatever, right? They knew of the concept of tiny human creatures that are human-like, that live inside of the mind, basically, and they watch it. And you can see this type of theme that's repeated, especially in shows like Black Mirror and like Love, Death, and Robots and those types of shows or whatnot. They show you Black Mirror's got this one episode called Black Museum. It's all about this, basically. You can see them putting this guy into what looks like some sort of furnace or something, and then this whole world, they suck out all of that stuff out of his head. Okay, all these tiny little creatures and people and stuff are being sucked out of this guy's head right here, and they're coming out of the top. They made some sort of a mechanism to like remove all of these extra worlds or whatnot that are inside of his mind. This is related to what's called the homunculus theory, which says, let's say, because they suppose, okay, this is a real theory, that this guy right here is a homunculus, and he lives inside of the mind of this guy, who's basically his God. And he gets to watch on a movie screen, right? All the things that are happening. But then they take it a step further and say, well, there must be who's in his mind, must be another homunculus. Who's in his mind must be another homunculus. Who's in his mind? Who's in his mind? Who's in his mind? It's fractal. It's infinite. It's holographic. This guy sitting in here watching the mind of God has someone else sitting in here watching the mind of God. It's repetitious. It's a loop. It's on a loop. It keeps on going and going and going, right? So that we can know ourselves. This is the old axiom, is to know yourself. That's how you defeat it all. That's how you beat the game. You have to know yourself. You have to bring it all together as one. Now, here's an example of a neural network right here on the left in the mind, in the brain. Here's the example of the cosmic web, right? So you could say brain space or brain computer, right? This is a brain cell over here. This is the universe over here. This is the human brain and the universe. I mean, obviously like an artist's rendition on both accounts, right? But you can see the similarity between the two. Now, let's talk about toruses and the torus field, right? The torus field is what shapes all of this. This is why we have different hemispheres in our brain. We have a torus field that wraps around our body. There's a torus field. There's a couple of different torus fields. This says mind-blowing quantum theories about the human brain. And you can read all of that. Many worlds, many Earths. That's the key. It's not Saturn way out there or whatever, like, and there's the Saturnians or whatever. No. It's Earth out there. And other people just like us that also live on the Earth. And many of them think that they're the only Earth. living in a quantum dream. Now, what is all of this, right? Simulation, okay? But like being inside of a quantum computer, it's dreamlike to us inside of it. It's not real, it's not lifelike, it's dreamlike, right? It seems very real, just like a real dream that you may have where you're in it and you can't tell it's a dream because you got emotions, you're breathing hard, things are popping off or whatever, but it's a dream. It's simulated, or at least appears to be. Incomparable! High five. Thank you so much. And welcome to all 300 people who are watching my channel right now. Good to see you. Artificial neural networks. Compared to what? What's not artificial? What's not created, right? If you're intelligent and something created you, or you have a creator, then you're artificial intelligence. You know what I mean? It's a pretty basic concept. Brain cells over here on the left. Galaxy over here on the right. This is the fractal verse. Now, it's infinite because this is only showing you a close-up of like the side of it or something, but in reality, it's toroidal in its nature, which I think I have some more stuff on that too. Fractal hologram. This is a hologram. All of what we experience. So here's back to the torus field, okay? You can see the torus field in many examples. Here's a magnet. You can see the torus field created. This is a light or something. This is a cell. This is a tree. This is the human body with, the torus field. There's many different torus fields, right? An apple, it shows you the weather, from the weather patterns to the earth to the galaxy and the cosmos. There are torus fields all over the place because it's the natural pattern. It's the natural shape of things, right? It's kind of like an apple shape. It goes outward, goes around, it comes back inward, and it creates a donut shape, basically, or a bagel shape, which is why you have the bagel in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Now, it is also holographic, and this is why you see the toroidal field all over the place in everything comprising, everything is comprised of it, is because it's a hologram, or it stands to reason that it's hologram-like. Compare hologram with simulation. Take those two things together, right? A hologram contains all of the coding for the entire hologram in every tiny little piece of the hologram. I'll come back to the hologram in a second. So this is the Big Bang, how they draw it, right? This is half of it. That point right there in the middle, that's the neutral point. That point at the top, if you continue drawing it, it will wrap around itself and it'll create a toroidal field. This says the toroidal universe, it would look like this, right? With creation right there in the middle, or possibility or potential would be out there in the middle, and then everything out towards the extremes or whatever would be your physical world or whatnot, right? This is the toroidal universe, and you can see this shape all over the place, and this is evidence. If it was a hologram, this is the biggest clue, I believe, because for example, here's the toroidal field, right? You got one in your chest area, one that wraps around your entire body. There's many of these. Many toroidal fields on many different size levels, okay? This right here is a picture. Let's say that this square that's all broken and fractured, fractal, right? Let's say this is the universe, okay? It's a hologram. And every section, if I ripped up a hologram right now, I have a little hologram card, and I ripped it up, right? Every tiny little piece would show me the entire hologram, all of it. It wouldn't be broken. It wouldn't be all messed up or anything. It says down here at the bottom, it says, unlike normal photographs, every portion of a piece of a holographic film contains all of the information of the whole. Thus, if a holographic plate is broken into fragments, each place can still be used to reconstruct the entire image. So, for example, you've got the main hologram, split that in half, you'll have the main hologram twice. Split that in half again, and you'll have the main hologram 2 more times, right? This is exactly the story of creation in the Vedas, in the Vedic belief system, Hinduism, etc., where the ultimate creator God, the initial God at the beginning, named Brahma. It goes by many names, but Brahma we'll go with, right? Brahma was all there was, and then Brahma decided to create, but Brahma was all there was. So Brahma had to pretend that Brahma could split itself, that God could split itself, which created equally God over here and equally God over here. However, it was a deception cast onto himself. That God cannot be divided. because it's everything. So it has to cast a trick upon itself. It has to forget itself. Whenever it puts a portion of itself over there, it has to create that. But because it's holographic, that's God and that's God. They're both equally God. They split again. Brahma splits again, and it creates more and half and half. However, every single one of those halves, all the way down to a grain of sand and far infinitely greater, are all God. They're all holographic. They're all a piece of the gigantic puzzle picture. They all answer the question of what is the purpose of life? You're the purpose. Like experiencing all of these wonderful different, experiences that we have. This is an example of, the God, and all these little bubbles would have their own God, right? And they have this veil of forgetfulness. So they forget who they are. They forget that they are God, that they're not separate. That's the illusion, is recognizing there's nothing separate at all. There are no enemies. There is no war. There is no conflict. There is no discrepancy. There is no imperfection. There is, you know what I mean? Like, there's no contradiction. It all makes sense. It's all working together. It's all for you, basically. Like, if you want to get specific about it. Or, as the old Egyptian proverb goes, the kingdom of heaven is within you, and whosoever shall know himself shall find it. The kingdom of heaven is within you, and whosoever shall know himself shall find it. Also replicated and spoken of in the Bible. Jesus said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God." And when asked, where is that kingdom? Right? It's not in outer space. It's not in hell below. The more you keep trying to travel to find it, the further you get from it, because you're lost in the mind. You're a lost boy. And Jesus says the kingdom of God is within you. It's inside of you, right? There's worlds inside of you. Billions and billions and billions of things happening all over the place that are all contributing collectively unbeknownst to you because of that veil of forgetfulness and that appearance of separation, that are all working together to try their individual bests to make you your best. You can also inversely do things that affect that entire universe inside of you, that entire galaxy, that fractal galaxy. So it's down inside of us. It's everywhere. It's outside of us. It's all over the place because it's all connected. Now, if you keep this thought in mind, and you suppose this is true, that means that you're the homunculus, right? We all are. Everything is, right? You're all a simulation. You're the angels and the devils upon the shoulders of a greater being that might need your help to wake up. In order for that greater being to wake up, or to stop its cosmic meditation, or however you want to see that, all you have to do is wake up. And it's contagious, because if there's a you here in this realm, in this world, on this version of Earth, there seems to be a connection. Right? Like, for example, I can sense the other versions of me out there, right? I can sense them. This is a part I don't have a lot to show you or offer evidence for. This is more of my feelings, okay? This gets into ESP and, telepathy and all kinds of fringe stuff that doesn't have a lot of physical evidence to it, except for a knowing deep down inside. I can feel my other versions of myself, right? The point is to come together. This says, I am a being, consciousness, dreaming a world and a body, which is what it is, simulated, the mind of God. We're inside of it, acting out, but we're helping out. Because we've been divided and divided and divided, all we have to do is realize there is no spoon, there is no division. It doesn't really exist. It's all good, it's all great, it's all beautiful, it's perfect. Because it's acting collectively in its totality as one. That there's nothing separate from anything else. And that's how we wrap up. All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream.